Thank you. Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. When the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer delivered his budget speech last week, he said his budget would deliver a stronger UK fit for the new age of optimism. However, his budget is a source of optimism for only a few people, and certainly for very few people, indeed, in my constituency of North Ayrshire Arran. The International Monetary Fund forecasts the UK will suffer the worst economic damage from COVID-19 of any G20 country, while ordinary citizens are left shortchanged. Now, my constituents in North Ayrshire Arran and millions of others will face a squeeze in living standards over the coming year. A middle-income earners will see their take-home pay fall by about 1%. The tax burden is now at its greatest since the 1950s, with national insurance contributions being raised and personal income tax allowances frozen, cutting people's disposable incomes, while inflation is set to rise above 4% by April. There is no levelling up there. While the Chancellor cuts taxes on bank profits, he failed to introduce measures to help households already struggling with rising prices on food and fuel. Paul Johnston, the Director of the Institute of Fiscal Studies, said, and I quote, "This is actually awful, yet more years of real incomes barely growing, high inflation, rising taxes, poor growth, keeping living standards virtually stagnant for another half-decade." This budget fails to deliver equality, fairness, and it fails to improve the lives of many people in Scotland. Indeed, anti-poverty charity Z2K said, and I quote, "There's absolutely nothing in this budget for the 3 million plus whose disability, illness or caring responsibilities mean they can't work. Where is the levelling up for them?" With nearly 1 in 5 pensioners living in poverty, the highest rate since 2008, more than 2 million older people are struggling financially. Yet the Tories think now is the time to end the pensions triple lock, which has been abandoned. So many pensioners will be £520 worse off next year. No levelling up for them either. By refusing to use the budget to reinstate the £20 a week Universal Credit Lifeline, recently cut, the Chancellor has failed to protect recipients, 2/3 of whom are in work, from falling living standards. And as for the national living wage increase, the new £9.50 rate does not apply to employees under 23 years old, and workers on the national living wage in receipt of universal credit will lose over half of any wage rise through a sharp reduction in their benefits. And of course, it's not even a national living wage. It's not a real living wage. It's a wee pretending living wage. Hard-pressed Scottish businesses also wonder where the Chancellor's optimism is coming from. With post-Brexit supply chain costs and disruption, labour shortages, price rises and soaring energy bills, it's difficult to see what is ahead for them. And despite the Chancellor announcing an increased Scottish block grant, the reality is that the Scottish Parliament will receive less grant funding in each of the next 5 years than in this one, despite the continuing challenges posed by COVID and the economic recovery. No one doubts, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the Chancellor has a difficult job to do. However, for the majority, he is clearly not going about it the right way. 1 in 3 children in North Ayrshire and Arran in my constituency live in poverty. For them and their families, talk of levelling up feels insensitive and hollow, and the ambition for Scotland to govern herself is therefore growing by the day.